necessarily reflect the opinions of the staff, management, ownership of the station. Jay and Janine are expressing their own opinions, and such is not a substitute for psychological or mental health advice. If you are experiencing an emergency, please hang up and call 911.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Momentum Mindset Show, where we're talking everything personal development, coaching, health, and the law. I'm your host, Jay, here with co-host Janine.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Please join us on Facebook, where we can be found at the Momentum Mindset Show. And if you want to call in and be part of the show, we would love to hear from you. It's 888-565-1470. And if being on live radio is not your thing, no problem. Send us your comments and we will interact with you on Facebook.
Let's create some momentum.
Well, hello, everybody.
Welcome
Happy
to the
Friday.
Mindset Show. Happy Friday.
Welcome. I am your host, Janine Davis, and with me in an undisclosed location is Jay Farrow. You know what I love? We're both in undisclosed locations. So good, right?
Or in undisclosed locations. Do you remember we talked about that we spend more time with the people at our offices than we do with our own family? And
it's crazy.
And I know a lot of people who are, for better or for worse, spending a lot more time with their family and wish that they were with the people that they work with. It's if you look at the curve of events here, Janine, it seems to me that that originally people were like, wow, it's so great, I get to be at home, and then after 10 weeks of this, you either learn to love it, or it can certainly be the most challenging period of your life. So here we are at the Momentum Mindset Show on another Friday afternoon. We've been with you guys now for about a year and a half, if you can believe that, Janine. And today, in the last several weeks, we have decided to use our skill set in our business to switch up a little bit and talk about how COVID is affecting things in the law and what we have seen at the law firm, questions that have been sent to our law firm, and do our best to be in support of our community here on the Momentum Mindset Show, knowing that everybody's going through their own challenges, and we hope that we can provide some information that make it a little bit easier for you to answer some of those questions that are now coming up for the first time.
Exactly. So we have several questions that we've received and that we're going to go through. A lot of them are, of course, COVID-19 related. We're still dealing with the ramifications of this really crazy event that seems to come around. There's a pandemic. There's been historical analysis that a pandemic seems to come around every 100 years or so. And I think the last big one that we had here in the United States and certainly worldwide was the Spanish flu. So we are, there's an entire generation that's probably since passed at this time. People born in the 1900s that went through doozy after doozy after doozy. So even with all of the things that have taken place and are still ongoing, I feel like we're very, very blessed, particularly in this country. I want to give a shout out to all of the medical professionals and the frontliners who are putting their lives at risk continually day after day to make sure that we are cared for and trying to save as many lives as possible. I do have a lot of...
Let's not forget, this is Memorial Day as well, and I want to also give a shout out to all of the armed services, men and women that are serving this country now, who have also served in the United States.
Absolutely.
Throughout history. I had a gift brought to my office today, and my dad was showing me some of the medals that my grandfather received in World War II as a member of the Royal Canadian armed forces. And we have a lot going on in our lives that we can otherwise, we don't realize it's Memorial Day, almost the unofficial kickoff of summer, and it's meaningful to just take a moment to think about those folks that are out there that are serving, that can't be home with their families. I can only imagine that this is a extremely challenging time. So thank you for your service. And
absolutely, thank you to the service, and on Memorial Day we remember those who have fallen in the service of this great country, and we honor you and your family, your legacy. Really grateful, and that's what I'm feeling too. Speaking of this whole COVID thing, I do have to share with you. So you've been coming to the office a little bit more regularly to take care of some things that need to be taken care of, and you have brought your best friend and mine, a one little Mitchell Farrow, and I have to say that he just lights me up. He's so fun. He's so fun. So even among all of the varied of emails and going through this and the seemingly endless Zoom calls and teleconferences and all this stuff that we get to participate in, he's a huge ray of light. So for all of you all that have pets, hold them near and dear. They're keeping us happy and sane. That is for sure.
And then I'm not going to forget, we are live on 95.3 FM. And we want to invite any of our listeners, whether you be on Facebook or listening out on the radio. Our number here at the studio is 888-565-1470. And give us a call, 888-565-1470. And we'll be happy to see if we can answer some of your questions, or bring up whatever you want. We're here. We've created the space. I mean, this is usually a personal development program that looks to create momentum in your life by sharing what goes on in ours as business owners and entrepreneurs, and human beings just going through the life experience.
Absolutely.
But these number of weeks, we just felt that our community could certainly use maybe some of the most asked questions of the law firm. Maybe we could support you with some general information about what we're seeing out there. I got something new this week, and it happened this morning. I'm not going to name names just yet, but it's an interesting thing that of how people are being taken advantage of, and it happened at a very large wholesaler retailer store. And it had to do with opening up of a credit account, and the customer not knowing the credit account was being opened. Now, your credit is sacred, and in this time, there's plenty of identity theft. What's worse in this scenario, seemingly, is that the individual went to the store, made a transaction, and as part of the transaction, without them knowing about it, a card was opened up. Now it's a credit account, so that's a charged credit against, or a charged pull on your credit. It did affect the customer's credit score. They opened up a line of credit for $5,000 at 29.99% interest, and it's like during this time period, there's certain things that should be double checked and checked. I mean, if there are ways and means to open up a credit account that easily, without the customer knowing about it, I'm just sharing what's something that came up to us. It might mean something to somebody out there who's gone to a store, or maybe online, where they ask you a couple questions and ask for some personal information. So if check, I guess the general thing would be check your credit. There's plenty of online credit websites. Go onto one of them, and I believe some of them are free. Check your credit in the last couple of months and see if anybody or maybe opened up a line of credit that you didn't know about. Let me share this with you. The other thing that I was thinking about as I was telling that story is, there's a lot of issues having to do with title, where people would create a title issue by basically just filing something with the clerk's office and taking somebody off title. So there's a lot of things that would seemingly be easy.
Can you say
for
that again? Is that something that people
identities.
actually can do? Jay, can you go a little bit more
Yeah,
into that? Because I think that's a really scary thing.
there was another person that had called the office recently, and there was some issue where someone was taken off title by a document that was recorded that affected the title, and they had no idea about it. And then all of a sudden, they no longer own their house. It's bizarre. So I'm just saying there are some easy tricks to if it has to do with your credit, if it has to do with the title to your home. I mean, these are checks that can be happening in 2 to 3 minutes online by going to your county recorder's office, checking your credit online, and just seeing if there's anything that's come up in the last few months, because you don't know unless you check. I mean, some people have those automated services that check their credit, and then they'll send them an alert.
And give you alerts.
But it's always good to go on and see if anything has happened. But it was amazing how this person was victimized by someone.
Out, right?
It seems like someone was getting commissions on the credit accounts to open up an account, and we'll get to the bottom of it. But it was like, well, if this happened to this one person with this particular this particular company, it's such a large company that it's something to look out for. And until something is filed in court, I'm not going to mention it here just yet, but I think that it's something that people can look out for.
Right. So actually, it's already 6:16. Where does the time go? It's really, really fast. I don't know. Do you want to get into some of these questions, or do you want to take a break and we'll get diving into the questions? What do you think?
Let's get into some of the questions, and we'll take a break in a few minutes.
Okay, great. So the first one is, if my job decides to open back up and I do not feel safe, is it considered job abandonment?
I would say that reading the tea leaves right now, number one, if and I've answered this in a couple of different ways. If you have underlying conditions and we have a client, for instance, that has underlying conditions that would make it impossible for you to show up without really risking your life. If you have those and you let your company know about those, there may be an issue that they can't just get rid of you because this would be some type of discrimination having to do with your disability. Otherwise, if you're required to show up at work, make the best of it. I don't know how else to put it. I mean, if you look at the general pulse of the nation right now, there is a wave of openings, and these openings are, and I'm guilty of it too. When I went to my office, originally I was wearing a mask, and then I'm like, well, there's nobody here, so it's like anything else. It seems like the leaders of the country, the leaders of the state say open, it means open. And I don't think a lot of employers are going to have a lot of patience. The employers that have been closed down for a couple months, especially for restaurants and the like, that they're just going to say, it's up to you. They'll probably find somebody else. And if they found somebody else, likely they're going to be able to do that, being that they can terminate you for any time. And if they terminate you because you didn't show up to work, I don't think that the employer could get into an issue. But every situation is different. Every situation is different, and every human being is different. But likely, the general thing is to, go to work and do your best at work to wear your mask, social distance, wash your hands, and
that's
safe.
That sort of segues into the next question, Jay, which is, legally, can I be forced to wear a mask? Where do you think that lands?
I thought we covered some of these questions, and because they keep coming up, we'll keep answering them.
They keep coming up.
Huh?
They keep coming up.
Right. So can you be forced to wear a mask? Just like you could be forced to wear an apron that says the name of the restaurant that you work at. It's similar to that. If it's becoming part of the required, attire, because a mask is not a political statement so much as it is, a health issue. If your employer says wear the mask and you don't want to wear it, you could get fired for not wearing it. Similar to, if the employer said, shirt and shoes are required for work and you don't want to wear shirt or shoes, you might not work there anymore.
Got it.
Check in the reason why you don't want to wear the mask. And yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about this question, quite a bit, and it's like,
right.
There's a lot of people out there that, and listen, I'm on all sides of this, Janine, politically. So, there's a lot of people out there that could take advantage of the situation to try to take advantage of unemployment. And if they're going to say, well, I don't want to wear a mask at work because I, feel that I don't want to. It just doesn't make any sense.
Well,
so
bring up
if something to happen, likely if it's a reasonable requirement, you're going to be required to wear the mask.
Okay. Well, you bring up an interesting point, because there are some people, not everybody obviously, but there are some people who are also on the other side of taking advantage of the pandemic. I know of some employees who are earning more money through unemployment than they were at work. So they're kind of, it's a little bit of a free-for-all for them. So they are seemingly using every excuse in the book not to get back to work. So you see, an interesting thing that's going on right now.
No, I said, and unemployment's not going to last forever. So,
Correct.
So everybody who's doing whatever they're doing out there, what you're doing, and this is like, we're not children. I mean, what you're doing. And,
right.
One of these questions of, can I get away with this? And I call them the, can I get away with this? And, loopholes. If you're living your life in loopholes, and we talk about this on our show, or otherwise, if you're looking for shortcuts, you're looking for loopholes. If you have a legitimate reason why we have a client who has a medical disability that if he's exposed to the general public, it could actually kill him. Now, if that's the case, then obviously tell your employer, and then they're going to have to work something out with you.
Correct.
But saying that I don't want to wear a mask,
that's not the case.
Hire me. If you're coming into my office and saying you have a case, I'm going to say, I'm not your lawyer.
Right. That's not to say. So speaking of small business and people engaging in the new normal, we have Glennie, who is a very faithful and really just amazing listener, and we're so grateful to him. He's commenting on Facebook that the small business, like his gym, they're doing the new normal guidelines. They're checking the temperature of their patrons, wiping down the equipment before and after. And he's doing his part by supporting the small business, which is the gym, by going, patronizing, and obviously paying his fees. So this really is going to take a collaborative effort for everybody to exist in this new normal, maintain health, and also support small business. I know in my household, we've taken the stance that at least once or twice a week, we will order in from local restaurants for that very reason, to support small business, which is really important. We can't forget about that.
Yeah, listen, we're all in this together, and I'm glad that you brought this up, because life does not exist without risk.
Right.
Every time you go into the drive to work, you're taking a risk.
Absolutely.
So, if we're going to get through this, if we're going to get through this, as Americans, as a global community, we get to take risks and take care of ourselves.
Absolutely.
It's time to start thinking about supporting your local businesses. It's time to start thinking about, how could I safely support my local business? And it could be your 1 day a week commitment to order out. I have recently have my chef come back once a week. That was gone for 10 weeks. There are certain things that you think to yourself, I'm going to take. Oh, I said this to my dad today. even if I were to get COVID now, I'm in a lot better spot than if I would have got COVID back in February. Because there's a lot of, there's scientists around the world, and I know this firsthand because my fiance is in healthcare. There are doctors and scientists and healthcare workers and people working around the world, whatever they're saying in the media, these people that do care and are making progress on finding protocols to treat COVID.
Absolutely.
So, so the risks, I mean, I'm not going to say that it's not dangerous. I'm not going to say that it's not a dangerous virus. I'm saying that as time goes by, the protocols, the information, the treatments only get better. And
Absolutely.
with that, and I trust that so much, and the good people working in healthcare and also the universal intelligence, God, whatever you want to call it, is working with those individuals to save human life. And with that, I'm willing to take a few more risks today than I was. Listen, we had my parents over the office today.
Right, and albeit with social distancing, wearing a mask,
Right.
but still socializing. I think this is a really important point too, especially for the elderly, but even for us and young people. The incidences of depression and isolation from the social distancing can also not be ignored, which is why I think that it's really important for all of us to be as responsible as possible to, yes, have social contact, because all of us need it. Your parents need it, you need it, I need it, we all need it. And how can we do so in a way that is still mindful of each other's health? And that really does go back to, can I be forced to wear a mask at work? It's really about, what is your social contribution here? What are you willing to do to be in community with everybody so that we can have a work, so that we can maintain our health? And I think that that's really what it comes to as well, is a bit of common sense, and also respect for others.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So listen, let's take a little break, and we'll get into some more questions right after. And again, want to encourage everybody to reach out to us either on Facebook or to call into the radio show. We are here ready, willing, and able to answer questions to the best of Jay's legal mind ability. And the number again is 888-565-1470. And we'll see you on the other side of the break.
There is nothing business about getting defrauded. It is always personal. Did you know that there are special laws that allow victims of personal and business crime the ability to prosecute and collect money damages in court? These laws can triple the amount of damages you may be entitled to. Farrell Law Firm is a boutique firm that prosecutes business crimes in civil courts. At Farrell Law Firm, we support people to stand up to the bullies using unorthodox methods of legal practice, which focuses on urgency and the relentless obsession for justice. If you have been the victim of a business, personal crime, or fraud, give us a call today for a free confidential consultation. Farrell Law Firm, 954-252-9818. Again, if you have been the victim of a business, personal crime, or fraud, give Farrell Law Firm a call at 954-252-9818.
You've been listening to the Momentum Mindset Show
with Jay and Janine. Give us a call at 888-565-1470. And now back to the show.
And we are back, everybody, on the Friday before Memorial Weekend. So, or the Friday leading into Memorial Weekend. So just before the break, we were talking, we had started to go through a couple of legal questions, and a lot of them have the same flavor, right? So one of them that came up is, during this time, and I imagine there are different circumstances surrounding, it's kind of a generic question, but I guess we'll give it our best shot. It's, can I be forced to move during this pandemic? So That to me is a very interesting question, because do you consider that we're still in the thick of the pandemic? Like, how would you see that?
I think referring to getting evicted,
A rental.
a rental.
Yeah.
Like there's been a moratorium on foreclosures. Likely, I'm going to go out of the box here a little bit and just share something more practical, I think. Can you be evicted during this time period? The answer to the question is yes, you can, and it always depends. Now, what are the odds of being evicted during this
There
time
was
period?
not a moratorium on evictions, Jay?
As far as evictions, there might have been, but let's say for commercial leases, and in some areas, depending on where you live, depending on where you're renting, um, there's a possibility of now that we're going into June, of evictions. Now, um, each county, and seemingly, I mean, there are statewide orders regards to courts. There are some countywide orders, and because everything is so fractured right now, it's really going to depend on where you live. It's also going to depend on the judge that you have, because even logistically, some judges would grant hearings on evictions sooner rather than later. I don't know how many judges that would be. I think that if I'm going from my gut, that most judges would probably grant some additional time to see what you can do to work things out with your landlord before throwing you out. Especially if you get sued for eviction, the number one thing that you need to do is respond to the paperwork that you received. Whether that's hiring a lawyer or you doing it yourself, you're required by law to respond. And as soon as you respond, there's a process that an eviction needs to go through. So even if the eviction starts, there are ways to ask the court to delay it. You can seek to pay your rent, start paying it in certain ways. And so, like I said in previous shows, number one is communication with your landlord. If you're not paying your rent, you should have already reached out to them and explained the situation and explained where you're at, where you see yourself in a month or two. Because that conversation could be the easiest way for you to avoid eviction. The second thing is look at your lease and see what it says about situations that are beyond the control of either you or the landlord, called act of God clauses. That may provide some answers for you. So there are certainly things where there is what the law says, there is what the process says to get an eviction. Is it going to be normal right now? Likely not. Is there going to be more leeway to people that don't pay? Probably. So if you are finding a situation where you just got sued, I'd like to see what county that's in and see, what the circumstances are. But this is not going to last forever. So let's assume that you could get it delayed for a month or two. If you're not paying your rent, eventually you're going to get evicted if that's what the landlord wants. So
Right.
I wouldn't stress out right now. Like if you just got sued for eviction, I would get a hold of an attorney right away and figure out how to negotiate those waters. But likely you're probably going to have a couple months before you're going to have to go anywhere. So that's the best that I can do without seeing a specific situation.
Got it. Also, in this line, I guess, also, do people need an attorney to file bankruptcy? And what would you like to comment on that?
No. If they're filing a bankruptcy for themselves, they can file it what's called pro se. The process for that is There's now a requirement before going into an individual bankruptcy to complete an online course. I would go online to Google and click online pre-bankruptcy course because everybody needs to take it. I think that they're free. You get a certificate, and then you'd have to take that certificate down to the clerk's office, which is at the federal courthouse in your jurisdiction, and ask for the forms for either a Chapter 7 or Chapter 13 bankruptcy petition. And yes, you can file it yourself. I wouldn't advise doing that. Bankruptcy is complex. It requires to comply with a lot of deadlines, especially in the beginning of the bankruptcy. Is it impossible for someone to do it themselves? No. Bankruptcy judges are especially kind to pro se litigants in most cases for a good faith bankruptcy filing. Not saying that they're going to help you through the process, but it's an interesting atmosphere in the bankruptcy court because there's a lot of lawyers, even opposing counsel that will support people in answering some questions. It is complex. There are things that can trip people up, especially in the beginning where they don't fill out forms correctly. They can have their bankruptcy dismissed right away.
Right.
But yes, it's possible. And if you're in a jam, the only thing that you need to do is get a few years of tax returns together and get that bankruptcy course taken care of, and then you can go ahead and go down to your local courthouse and file, and then see if you can find a bankruptcy attorney.
Jay, are you comfortable at all speaking into the distinctions between a Chapter 7 and a Chapter 13, or is that too elaborate maybe for the show? I don't know.
If I can break that down in its simplest form, Chapter 13 is really designed by Congress to support people in saving their primary residence. It's a plan to pay off your secured creditors, most your house, and then your unsecured debt, which is like your credit cards, for a maximum of about 5 years. And when you go into a Chapter 13, basically what you're doing is you're designing a plan for the next 3 to 5 years to basically handle your debts to the extent that you can and pay your mortgage. It's a longer process, but it does provide for that possibility to pay off your credit cards, that reduced value on the credit cards, but pay your mortgage off. Now, a Chapter 7 is what they call a liquidation of your assets, and there are exemptions to that. But really, the Chapter 7 is where you're going in to clear out the debt that you can, which is your unsecured debt, which is your credit cards, and that some of that stuff just passes through, like your car payment, your house payment. So in a Chapter 7, the Chapter 7 trustee comes in. Let's say you have a home in Florida and in Miami, and it's worth $300,000, and you have a mortgage on it for $250,000. It's your homestead property. You could go into a Chapter 7 and discharge your credit card debt and keep your home. But let's say that in your house you have a bunch of stuff like a Monet or something that was like the first copy of the Constitution, something really valuable. The minute that you file bankruptcy, the trustee owns like everything that you own, your wedding ring to the toilet paper in your house, and it's the trustee's job is to come in and liquidate all of those assets to pay off your unsecured creditors, which is your credit card population and some other types of unsecured debt. Chapter 7 has changed quite a bit since 2005, where the bankruptcy code was rewritten, such that there's a presumption going into the bankruptcy that you're doing it for improper purposes. So there's also a limitation of how much money you can make before you could even go into a Chapter 7. And there's a whole like math equation based upon how many kids you have, or if you're single, how much money you make, and if you don't qualify for the Chapter 7, you're kicked directly into a Chapter 13. The distinctions are Chapter 7 is over pretty quickly if you get through it. It's over in about 90 days. where basically you surrender all of your assets to the Chapter 7 trustee, except for about $7,000 of exempted property. And bankruptcy is fascinating because it truly does give someone the ability to have a fresh start. I practiced bankruptcy in the beginning of my career. I represented Chapter 7 trustees, debtors, and creditors in Chapter 7s, 13s, and 11s. It really is. It really is a fascinating world of what they call equity, where all kinds of possibilities happen. And what I find interesting is that, yes, bankruptcy stays on your credit for 7 years, but it'll stay with you forever, number one. But the fascinating thing about bankruptcy is that your credit really does start over the second that you get out of bankruptcy, because creditors fall over themselves, some of them, the ones that were charged 30 to 35% interest, because you can't go into bankruptcy for like another 5 years. So you do get a chance to have a fresh start. But I advise people, bankruptcy should be used, as that, as a last resort. There's a lot of things you could do outside of bankruptcy that you can't do inside of bankruptcy. A lot of what I call the good stuff was taken out of the bankruptcy code back in 2005, where people who make more money than a certain amount can't just go into a Chapter 7. So it's its own world. It really is. It's its own world. But I would make sure that you consult somebody before you press that button, because there are so many things you can do outside of bankruptcy that you can't necessarily do inside the bankruptcy.
Right. Okay. So the next question that we have here, Jay, that was submitted to us was, can a verbal contract or agreement be enforced?
Again, I love having to do this. It depends.
Listen, this is part of being of service. And again, we just want to remind people
the short answer, the general broad stroke answer to the verbal, there are such things as verbal contracts. They are enforceable as a matter of law. I mean, you can, once you would agree with somebody and you don't even have to shake their hand. So yes, they are enforceable. They are a pain in the tuchus to for us,
right?
So get it in writing if you can. Send an email to confirm, what happened. But yes, and I would imagine that during this time where people are not, they're communicating on the phone, they're communicating on Zoom, there's a difficulty having people actually sign agreements. That verbal agreements will be coming up a bit, as far as litigation is concerned. Send an email with electronic signature, and do your best to get something in writing.
Okay. So yeah, spoken like a true lawyer. Get it in writing. Get it in writing all day long. Get it in writing. If it's a text, if it's a letter by the post, if it's electronic signature, get it in writing, people, as often as you can. But it's a really valid question, because I think a lot of people do business on a handshake sometimes. Everybody knows that you should get it in writing. But as the story goes, and people are people will do people things, it's not unusual to have agreements in verbal agreements. So it is an interesting question. And of course it begs again, we're speaking in generalities, everybody, so please bear with us on that.
I want to bring out a point, though. I want to say this. I want to say this, Janine, and I take it with a grain of salt, or take it to heart. In business, if you're going to rip somebody off, and you know that you're going to do it, and you tell someone, rely on my word. You know what? At the end of the day, money for money, dollar for dollar. Now, I'm saying that if you were entering a verbal agreement for $10,000 and you only provided $5,000 worth of stuff, you knew you were going to do that up front, and you were defrauding from the very beginning. Most people don't try to enforce their rights. They walk away and they never speak up.
Yes.
They that they'll never get anywhere, the other side has more money, that no one's going to believe me. So maybe one person in 100 speaks up. Okay, so one person in 100 speaks up. So that person who just stole $5,000 from 99 other people has made a lot of money operating their business that way. But the first person that speaks up, that guy, the bully is going to do what they do, and they're going to throw their lawyers at it and everything else. This is why it's so important to anticipate and prepare for eventualities in the form of a written contract. And that way, it's a lot easier for us lawyers to handle a case than if it was, he promised me this, or she promised me that, and they didn't do it. And mind you, even if it's with a contract, most people don't complain. They just walk away figuring it's not worth their time. So people that rip people off get away with it for some time before it actually happens to them where they get caught. And they don't like getting caught, and they'll do anything it takes to delay, to distract, to all kinds of stuff. So know who you're dealing with. If you start that this person did this before, and you probably shouldn't get in business with them. If there's smoke, start checking in with yourself as you draft that contract, because if you are going to be victim number 101, be prepared for it. If you can. It's not always possible, and it's a shame because I've been doing this for some time, Janine. As a matter of fact, my 18th year of graduating from law school just came and went, and I've seen that over a period of time that being a bully and being a fraudster works in the short term. Otherwise, people wouldn't do it. And because so many people actually stand up for themselves, or that side of the fence usually doesn't have the means to do it, it's a matter of really checking in at the beginning of an agreement. Trust your gut. Get it in writing. Even if it's difficult, trust me is not a way to do business. Trust me is a way. I know it's nice to hear, and you want to trust people, but the more that they tout their honesty, trust me.
Or
I can't believe you're questioning me. Those are all red flags. And in this environment that we're all going through right now, a lot of this is coming to the surface and being fleshed out. So just be mindful when people ask me about verbal agreements. If anybody's asking you just to enter in a verbal agreement or saying, "Trust me, I promise you," and then if they don't have an agreement to present to you in the beginning, that should be a red flag of whatever you're working on. Not everything is going to work out as well as that Jersey handshake that we saw in that. There's a Broadway play called Jersey Boys, and it talks about the relationship between Frankie Valli and one of the band members of the Four Seasons that wrote all the music, and it was done on a handshake. And it's worked out for some 45 or 50 years, but that's not the way that it usually works. So just guys out there, just be careful, be mindful. If someone doesn't have a contract, or if you read the contract and you just don't understand it, spending a little bit of time and a little bit of money up front will save you a lot, going forward. But I can't say that enough because I see it like one in 100 or one in 1,000 sometimes. We'll just let it go, walk away, and that's how these people who say, "Trust me, I'm a good person. Don't you know? How can you question me? That's so rude for you to question me." I mean, we should be getting into a point. we know that that's
sometimes people think that because they're not sophisticated enough or whatever the case may be, that they shouldn't ask, and the person who has more business experience, they let themselves be led by that person. But it is really important that, first of all, these verbal agreements go on with every echelon of a business person. And so I want people to know that it's not a rookie mistake. People make the mistake all the time. And it is really important to check in with your gut and get things in writing. We have a comment here. Um, I can't, it's not coming in clearly. Can you see it clearly on your
No,
end, Jay?
it's Sonia. It's from Sonia, and she's talking about herself during the, she almost lost her brother-in-law, and just to basically be safe.
Okay.
So
I
be
think
safe out there.
Yeah, exactly. We can't say that enough. And you know what? On that note, Jay, let's take our final break, and we'll see everybody at the other side of this break. And hit us up with any questions.
There is nothing business about getting defrauded. It is always personal. Did you know that there are special laws that allow victims of personal and business crime the ability to prosecute and collect money damages in court? These laws can triple the amount of damages you may be entitled to. Farrow Law Firm is a boutique firm that prosecutes business crimes in civil courts. At Farrow Law Firm, we support people to stand up to the bullies using unorthodox methods of legal practice, which focuses on urgency and the relentless obsession for justice. If you have been the victim of a business, personal crime, or fraud, give us a call today for a free confidential consultation. Farrow Law Firm, 954-252-9818. Again, if you have been the victim of a business, personal crime, or fraud, give Farrow Law Firm a call at 954-252-9818.
You've been listening to the Momentum Mindset Show
with Jay and Janine. Give us a call at 888-565-1470. And now back to the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Wow, that piano really took us into this next segment, huh? By the way, for those of you who may be new to the show, Joe, I don't know who Joe is, but Jay wrote that piece of music. So that little ditty is something that he came up with. Yeah, so Jay, a couple of other questions that we have here. It is also employment. I don't know if it's related to COVID or not, but the question is, can my employer force me to get mental health counseling?
An employer can't force you to do anything, and I don't know what that necessarily means or what that looks like. Employers can suggest that, counseling be something that would support you. And again, it depends. I mean, if you're working for a federal agency, or if you're working in some type of law enforcement, and you're going through certain things, and if you have identifiable issues, then certainly the employer has a right to demand that you go through certain trainings or certain treatment. And if you don't do that, then again, the employer has the right to fire you. If there's all kinds of mental health issues, from depression, addiction, chemical dependency, all of those things. If you're in a situation where people around you are suggesting that counseling or mental health therapy would support you, likely there's a reason for that, and Most people care. I mean, it's my experience in the companies that I've worked for, in my own, in companies that I've worked with over the course of time and represented, that people truly care about other people, and in the workplace, especially, like I started off saying in the beginning of the show, is that we spend more time with the people at work than we do with people at home. So there's a lot of connection that happens at work. And with that connection comes concern. And if the concern is genuine, now if you have a vindictive boss who is conjuring up stories about you, about something, about your mental health in order to advance their agenda, okay, so you start taking a look at something else. Because every situation is in fact. So when you're asking a question of can you be forced into something, okay, so we're going through a global crisis right now. Many people are walking into the workplace that they're different than they were 10 weeks ago. Some people have really bad home lives. Some people have been completely in isolation for 10 weeks. And if you're walking back in and you haven't showered in 2 or 3 weeks, and there might be a conversation that an employer can say, I'd like you to go see somebody. And if you say no and try to sit down in your chair, the employee said, well, if you're not going to do that, then I'm going to let you go. So every situation being different, you got to just check in. There could be all kinds of reasons why that happens. But I find, as a general broad thing, people care about people. There are certainly people out there that don't. And I think that they're the exception rather than the rule. And I think a lot of them find themselves in the other end of things that we do. So if you're going through, there's nothing to be ashamed of as far as mental health. If there's things that are out there that you think, go see what that's all about, and find that they're actually trying to support you.
Absolutely. Okay, and also there was a question that came in about what people can do if they feel that they have been the victims of price gouging. What are the provisions in the law for people who think that they have been gouged?
Well, there's a number of provisions in the law or causes of action that you would have for price gouging.
Hey, Jay, I'm so sorry. It turns out we have a caller by the name of Steve.
Okay, awesome.
Patch him through. Steve? Hello?
Blueberries.
Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Hello?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for
Jay.
joining us.
Janine. Yes, I just
Hi.
wanted to call with one observation based on your previous conversation, that just because you can go somewhere doesn't mean you should.
Yes, and this is we encourage everybody to be judicious and to be safe. And I would agree with that. I think everybody has to use their own judgment and consider other people.
And keep in mind that some businesses are opening up and it's not in your best interest.
That's it, you guys. That's our show. Thank you, Steve, for
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for calling in. We will see you next week.
That's right. Stay well, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Momentum Mindset Show. For your hosts, Jay and Janine, we'll see you here next week. Thank you for being real, authentic, and honest.
If you'd like to reach us, Please contact us on our Facebook page, The Momentum Mindset Show, or on our office phone line, which is 954-559-6987.
We are stronger together.
And remember, keep going.